Welcome to LanguageBox.co. This is the business course, and this is the upper intermediate level, Unit 1, Meet the Company, from Small Beginnings. In today's lesson, we're going to read a short text about a furniture company, and we're going to do a comprehension exercise about the text and also a vocabulary lesson. In part 2, we'll look at some different tenses and the functions we use these tenses for. But in part 1 here today, we're going to look at this reading text about a famous furniture company. And I'll read the text and you can follow along with me. And when we're finished, we'll go through a short comprehension exercise. So, to begin with the text. From Farm to Fame. This is the story of Ingvar Kamprad and the company he founded. Read the text and then do the exercises below. Think about furniture. Think about a furniture brand. Are you thinking of IKEA? With a sales turnover of 29.2 billion euros by the end of 2013, it is the largest furniture company in the world and easily the most famous, so probably you are. How IKEA grew so large is a story of one man and three brilliant ideas. The man in question is Ingvar Kamprad, and he began his entrepreneurial career at the age of only 5, selling matches to his neighbors. By the age of 7, he had learned to ride a bicycle and was selling his products in neighboring villages too. 10 years later, Ingvar established his own business, which he called IKEA, a name formed from the initials of his name, plus the first letters of Elmtarul and Agunnarul, the farm and village in Sweden where he grew up. 5 years later, in 1948, IKEA started selling locally made furniture, and sales began to grow. And then came idea number 1. Ingvar wanted to reach a wider market than the people who could visit his store, and his solution was to create a catalogue. In 2013, IKEA printed 212 million catalogues, and the online version received an amazing 1.3 billion visits. An unnamed IKEA worker came up with brilliant idea number 2. He had to take home an IKEA table and couldn't fit it in his car, so he decided to take off the table legs. The concept of flat-pack furniture and self-assembly as a means of keeping prices down had been born. By 1958, IKEA was employing its own designers and manufacturing its own furniture, and it was one of their designers, Gillis Lundgren, who made arguably the biggest contribution to IKEA's success. He had only been working at IKEA for a matter of months when he noticed the simple and practical ideas used in IKEA's own kitchens, and was inspired to apply the same thinking for all furniture items throughout the home. He immediately sat down and designed the Torre drawer unit, which has become a symbol of IKEA's design vision. The catalogue, the reasonable pricing, and the stylish but practical design have proved to be the key ingredients of a remarkable success story. And what of that young boy selling matches to his neighbors in a small village in Sweden? Now 88 years old, Ingvar Kamprad still acts as an advisor to the company, a company which has now opened 345 stores in 42 different countries. And I imagine probably there's an IKEA store where you live. I know certainly there's one about 100 kilometers from me. We've had a look at the text. Now let's have a look at our comprehension exercise. I think we're not going to have many problems here. The first question, I imagine you know the answer. Anyway, IKEA was founded in, the key word here is founded, and the answer was, of course, Sweden. And if we have a quick look at the text, we can see here in paragraph 2, the text tells us that Ingvar came from a small village in Sweden. So IKEA became immediately successful. Many large businesses these days don't achieve immediate success. So what about IKEA? Were they immediately successful? Let's have a look back at the text, and our keywords here: immediately and successful. Let's have a look and see what the text says. Okay, well, we know by the age of 7, Ingvar had founded this company, but it was only 5 years later, in 1948, that IKEA started selling locally, and only by 1958, several years later, did it employ its own designers and manufacturers. So IKEA became immediately successful. It's false. It took many years to achieve the success that they now have. The text mentioned 3 great ideas that contributed to the success of IKEA, and the first idea was to make catalogues so that a wider audience, a wider group of customers could see their product and actually buy the products. So how many catalogues do they print annually? And annually, of course, means every year. So if we go back to the text, what does it tell us about the catalogues? And here, in the second part of the text, we can see 212 million catalogues in 2013. So our answer is going to be over 200 million, answer B. The founder of IKEA, Ingvar Kamprad, was the person who came up with the idea of flat pack furniture. Well, he was the founder, but was he the person who came up with this idea of selling furniture in a flat pack box? Can you remember the answer? Here it is in the second paragraph here, and we can see it was an unnamed IKEA worker came up with a brilliant idea, and if we read a bit further on, we can see flat pack furniture. So it wasn't Ingvar, it was one of his workers, whose name we don't know. So the answer to number 4 is false. Now, annual turnover in 2013, the last year that we've got records for IKEA. And how much did they turn over? What was the total amount of sales? We're not talking profit here, we're just talking the amount of goods that they sold in the year. And we've got 3 choices: 29 million euros, 29 billion euros, or 290 billion. Can you remember? It was actually 29.2 billion was the turnover. So the answer is here, answer B, 29 billion. Now, question number 6. By 2013, IKEA had opened how many stores worldwide? 345, 1,345, or 3,450? And I think the answer to this question was on the second page. And yes, here it is at the bottom of page 2. And we can see the company has now opened here 345 stores. So the answer is here, answer A, 345. And how many different countries has IKEA opened stores in? I think it was on the same line, and I think it was 42, but let's go back and check. Yes, it was 42 different countries. So for question number 7, we've got answer A, 42. And the final question, Ingvar is no longer connected with the company. Well, you might expect this to be true because I think Ingvar must be in his 80s now. But is it true? Does he no longer have a connection with the company? And again, this last paragraph gives us the answer. And it tells us now 88 years old, so you'd expect him to be retired, but actually, no, he still acts as an advisor to the company. So even though he doesn't have a full-time job, he does still have a connection with the company. So the answer here is true. Okay, so that's the end of our comprehension exercise. Let's move on now and look at some of the vocabulary that we came across in this unit. And here you can see we've got a mixture of 7 words and phrases taken from our text about IKEA. What we need to do is match the word and phrase on the left with its correct meaning over here on the right. So our first phrase is come up with something. And you might remember this is a phrase which is usually used with the word idea, to come up with an idea. So where do we see idea? Over here on the right, and yes, we can see idea here. So come up with something, to think of something such as an idea or a plan. Answer E. Turnover. We mentioned turnover briefly when we looked at the comprehension exercise, and we mentioned it was the total sales of a product in a year. So we need to find an answer which talks about the total sales, and here we are. Answer D. We can see the value of goods and services that a company sells in a period of time, and it's the turnover. Number 3, entrepreneurial. You might have heard the noun of this word. This is the adjective. The noun you might have heard before is an entrepreneur, and this is a noun which we use to refer to a person, and it's a person who especially has an idea to start a new business. Well, more than has the idea, he actually starts a new business. And entrepreneurial then is the ability to start new businesses. And where can we find an answer that talks about starting a business? If we look here in answer B, we can see start a business. So our correct answer for number 3 is yes, B, using money to start a business and to make business deals. Okay, moving on to number 4, catalogue. I think this was Ingvar's brilliant idea number 1. And I think this was Ingvar who came up with this idea. And if you remember in the text, he decided to print a catalogue so that he could sell to people who couldn't actually physically come to his shop. They could buy the catalogue, they could see his products, and they could order just by seeing a picture in a book. So a catalogue we can match with, yes, down here is G. A book containing pictures and information about things you can buy. So that was 4, is a catalogue. And moving on to number 5, flat pack furniture. This I think was brilliant idea number 2. The guy who couldn't fit the table into the back of the car. And his solution was to take off the table legs. And instead of being a bulky unit, it now became a flat unit which he could fit into his car. We can see that our answer is yes, it's C, a piece of furniture sold in parts, which the customer must then fit together. And very often they can be quite difficult. You sometimes need a degree in engineering to be able to figure out some of them. So that was number 5, flat pack furniture. Self-assembly furniture. We've got flat pack and self-assembly. And self obviously is connected with you doing something, and assembly means to put something together. So our meaning is going to be, yes, here it is up at the top, furniture that you buy in separate pieces and you put together yourself. So self-assembly and flat pack, they're both words connected with furniture you can buy from IKEA. And finally, number 7, it's a means of doing something. And there's only one answer left now, so it must be answer F. And simply a means of doing something is a method of doing something. And you might remember in the text, I think it referred to a means of keeping prices down. So that's all of our vocabulary for today. And that's the end of part 1 of the video lesson. In part 2, we're going to be looking at some grammar, and we're going to be doing a review of all of the main tenses, present and past tenses. So please join me in part 2 when we have a look at different tenses, and we'll be looking at when do we use these tenses, what is the function of these tenses, what do they allow us to do. So goodbye for now, and I hope to see you in part 2.